New Year, same government shutdown, and heading into day 13 of the crisis, Trump once said he'd, quote, be proud to own. After another meeting this afternoon, the two sides are indicating they're no closer to a resolution. Now, this comes just a day after the president tweeted, the shutdown is not where Nancy Pelosi wanted to start her tenure as speaker. Let's make a deal? Let's make a deal, question mark? Hardly inspires confidence, especially as Trump keeps up his mantra of border wall funding or nothing, and Democrats take over the House when Congress reconvenes tomorrow with zero intention to give in to the president's demands. But as 2018's problems turn into 2019's in Washington, many are already looking ahead to 2020, including recently re-elected Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren.
Today I announced an exploratory committee for President of the United States.
Warren's mid-holiday announcement makes her the first of a slew of Democrats who are considering challenging Trump, including former Vice President Joe Biden and failed Senate candidate Beto O'Rourke. But Warren's not the only politician with mass ties starting off the new year in the headlines. Former Governor Mitt Romney kicked off his tenure as the new Republican senator from Utah with a biting op-ed in the Washington Post writing, Trump's words and actions have caused dismay around the world, and promising to, quote, speak out against significant statements or actions that are divisive, racist, sexist, anti-immigrant, dishonest, or destructive to democratic institutions. Trump responded during a cabinet meeting this afternoon.
I wish Mitt could be more of a team player. If he fought really hard against President Obama like he does against me, he would have won the election.
Joining me to talk about this and other great expectations are former Republican State Rep Geoff Diehl, who ran for Senate against Warren in November. Geoff, it's good to see you. Thanks for being here. Steve Kerrigan is former CEO of the Democratic National Convention and president of Obama's Inaugural Committee. Steve, good to see you, too. Nice Steve, there was a Republican Senate candidate who predicted this, that there'd be a race for U.S. Senate, then immediately a race for president. Here he is.
We certainly don't need a senator who wants to be reelected just to spend 2 more years running for president instead of serving the people of Massachusetts.
Did that guy, Geoff Diehl, not have a point in the campaign? And not only was he right, but didn't he have a point?
He had a point then. He has a point, I'm sure, that he's going to make in a little bit now.
So should voters not be... They just re-elected this woman. She hasn't even been sworn in for a second term.
So I would say this, and we could debate a lot about her DNA stunt or whatever you want to call it, but at least in doing that, she indicated to all of us that she was likely going to be running for president. So at least she was a little more up front prior to the election that you guys had, and then voters had a choice, a decision to make what path they wanted to take, and they chose it. And
but
now
polls suggest
now she has lifted the veil.
But polls suggest that Massachusetts voters are not wildly enthusiastic about her running for the presidency.
That, yeah.
So how does that fit your scenario? Of
I'm just saying, at least she was remotely honest. She at least showed us a little bit of what her thinking was.
You know, Geoff Diehl, obviously that was you as a young and irresponsible candidate. When Scott Walker, governor of Wisconsin, announced that he was running for president, 2 months after he was elected? John Kasich from Ohio did it 7 months after. Were you as critical of them as you were of Elizabeth Warren?
Look, they announced after they were elected. She announced or made it very clear for a long time before she was seeking the Senate seat that she wanted to run for the presidency.
So, I mean, that would argue for his point that the voters knew that they were electing a person who was probably going to run for the Senate. So what's the problem if they're on notice?
No, they did. Unfortunately, the problem is that, I think you don't have somebody working for the state of Massachusetts. They spend a lot of time running around the country instead of focusing on things that the state could really use right now.
Even if she's not your cup of tea, and we know she's not Geoff Diehl, is she America's in 2020?
I don't think so.
Why not?
I think the Democratic Party is smartening up. I think they're looking for someone more centrist so that they can try to, regain the White House.
Like who?
Look, I think Kamala Harris out of California will come out with a pretty strong base, and I think that she's already taken steps to, moderate a position that's going to be acceptable across the country. Elizabeth Warren's like a moth to a flame when it comes to more government control over corporations, healthcare, everything, and I don't think that there's an appetite for that in flyover countries.
Is there an appetite for that?
I think we're going to have an incredibly vigorous debate in the Democratic Party. We're going to have 12 of them just that the DNC runs and a lot more after that with probably a couple of dozen
Are you avoiding the question? You are.
Absolutely.
Why are you avoiding the question?
Because I'm looking forward to seeing all these folks who are going to be running. I mean, Elizabeth is running now, seemingly. Julian Castro is running, potentially Vice President Biden, Senator Harris. I mean, there's lots and lots of folks.
Well, if my radio co-host, who you both know, was sitting there, she'll be sitting there in the next segment, we're here, she would probably say something like, what a lot of people in the media describe as some far-left agenda, and you might describe it that way, it's pretty mainstream these days. The notion that everybody should have access to affordable health care, Medicare for all, that tax cuts should be for the middle class. They should not be for the well. Isn't that a message?
So I think you will see a shift from a lot of the messaging that, frankly, Bernie Sanders brought to the race in 2015 and 2016 has moved on the political spectrum a little bit more to the middle because of things like healthcare costs, because of things like the cost of education for families all across the country.
I want to ask you both what your reaction was, not to the original announcement, the 4-minute announcement, which I thought was actually very well done and effective by Elizabeth Warren, but there was an Instagram Live thing the same day that, well, here it is.
Hold on a sec. I'm going to get me a beer. Hey, Robert, my husband Bruce is now in here. You want a beer?
No, I'll pass on the beer for now.
You sure? Okay, say hello to folks.
Yes.
So, this is my sweetie.
Hello.
Who've we got here so far? Skylar, and 14 others.
After I saw that, I said to myself, I want to get me a beer. By the way, I don't have any doubt from people who are much closer to than I am that she does like a beer.
Sure.
And but it was almost cringeworthy, so out of context, I thought. What do you think?
Well, look, politicians are always trying to find ways to be more relatable to people. That was clearly a stretch. I'm sure she enjoys a good beer, as a lot of us do. Brett Kavanaugh enjoys a lot of good beers. But I think, frankly, stunts like that get in the way of the message.
If I can help you with a transition, if we're going to talk about Romney, I don't know if you remember this, but when Romney was going to run for president in, I think it was 12, one of the first things he did was a Twitter picture of him doing the dishes in the kitchen saying, I guess it's my turn to do the dishes. Relatable? I'm not so sure.
Well, but do you remember the great, after he lost, an even better photo was him wheeling a cart out of Costco with mountains of toilet paper and things like this. Since we're talking about Mitt Romney, everybody now has seen this Washington Post op-ed, very critical of the president, even though he says, I agree with some of his policies. He hadn't even been sworn in yet as a senator. I've read 3 analyses so far, and I want to see which one you ascribe to. One, that he's basically saying, I'm going to lead the anti-Trump faction of the Republican Party. 2, that he essentially is announcing that he's running in 2 years. Or 3, that it's just another flip-flop. And speaking of that, here's a little bit of Romney on Trump at different times. Here he is.
Being in Donald Trump's magnificent hotel and having his endorsement is a delight. Donald Trump is a phony, a fraud.
These discussions I've had with him have been enlightening and interesting and engaging. I've enjoyed them very, very much.
What is he saying? Why do you do this?
I never heard any negative Trump stuff when he was on the campaign trail for Senate in Utah. But all of a sudden, again, before he's even sworn in, he's got to take the Bill Kristol, Jeff Flake, I guess, position on the circuit, the speaking circuit, about being anti-Trump in Washington.
But what do you think is the agenda? I mean, again, this is even before he's sworn in. This is on January 1st, I think, in the Washington Post. And it wasn't quite as passionate as that take no prisoners speech he gave, basically saying that candidate Trump was the worst thing. And by the way, we should make clear, you were the co-chair of the Trump campaign in Massachusetts. I should have mentioned that a minute ago. But what is the Romney agenda? Is he just maybe saying what he thinks? Yeah, look, I don't think there's a presidential run behind it. I certainly don't think that it's going to help people from Utah as far as getting any good relationship going with the White House. So maybe he's just speaking from the heart because at this point, nothing to lose. What do you make of this?
First of all, as a Bay State Democrat, we're used to Mitt Romney flip-flopping back and forth. We've been seeing it for a quarter of a century. I'm not shocked. I believe this is one of those moments where I'm going to be Senator 100. I'm entering the Senate. I used to be the nominee for the Republican Party. I want folks to know who I am. I want folks to remember who I am.
So maybe heartfelt.
Well, a little bit heartfelt, but also
surely
please pay
doesn't help
attention
him
to
at home, as he suggested a minute ago in Utah.
It doesn't help him at home. First of all, he's 71 years old. I don't know how many more re-elections he's going to need, but I don't think it helps him at home. But also,
excuse me, Nancy Pelosi's 78, Bernie Sanders is 77. I mean,
so Republicans, we don't talk about ageism. We can't do that.
I'm not talking about ageism. I worked for Ted Kennedy, and if he were still alive, God bless him, I'd be voting for him every 6 years.
You know, speaking of, can we come back home just for a second? After you lost the Senate race, you ran for a short period of time to be chair of the Republican Party here.
Didn't officially run, was looking at it.
But you were looking at it, and a couple of your people really close to you trashed you after the fact. Some said you were naive, some said you were a sellout. I'm serious. I haven't heard, those are quotes, I haven't heard a response. What's your response to those people who say that they essentially got in your camp, backing your candidacy, and then you not only withdrew, but you endorsed what they considered the Antichrist, essentially, to be Charlie Baker's candidate? Well,
Brent Anderson, who's running for the position, has been the treasurer for 18 years, I believe, for the Mass GOP. Certainly a lot of inside institutional knowledge with the Mass GOP. I've got some other options I'm looking at as well, which is part of the reason I decided not to make the run for it. But I am going to be I think, a part of helping the Mass GOP try to rebuild with good candidates for the legislature.
Did you cut a deal with Governor Baker or his people to get a job?
No. Look, I've been working on a chance to go down to Washington and work with the administration, irregardless of the Mass GOP. So,
do you have a Trump job lined up, a job with the administration lined up?
Interviews at this point, but look,
for what kind of things?
Something in the administration. Jeez,
they've got to reopen the government first. Don't they?
You're not looking for anything, are you?
Oh, well, I want to know what you're going to have first. You don't want to tell us?
Not at this point. I think I still have to, have some meetings. But
fair enough.
Yeah.
Steve, nice to see you. Thank you so much. Jeff,
thanks, Jim. Great to see you.
Good to see you again. Really appreciate your time.